Welcome to DFC on the Green. I'm Jason Gilbo. With me is Chris Etherington. Taking a look at the Players Major Championship this week. A loaded field as usual. You and I were talking, kind of looking back at previous history here, and there were some times where a lot of these studs were falling out and dropping like flies.
Yeah, we were just looking at the history just last year, and then there was a lot of big names missing the cut. Spieth being one of them. But I think that's pretty much what you get for this week. No one really knows what to make of it. You could just basically stick with your process and hope that your picks are the ones that will pull through this week. I think this is the first time in a while where outside the majors, I think everyone in the top 50 in the world is actually playing this week. So just from that standpoint, it is almost a coin flip. You just really don't know what's going to happen. It's been said many times with this course that there's really no number one style of player that will play well. You just don't know. That's what makes it so exciting to watch every year from that standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, what are you looking at anything specific this week? Like you mentioned, like there are a wide range of things you can kind of start to look at. Like strokes gained around the green is obviously going to be a big one. I think ball striking is the other one that I'm kind of weighing pretty heavily this week.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think the four main stats that I look at every week, I'm just going to plug them in just because I think they're one of the more key stats that I like to look at every week. That is birdies are better, strokes gained approach the green, proximity, and also around the green. The other two stats that I'm looking at is strokes gained off the tee. There's a lot of hazards on this course, and if you are out of your way with your driver, not hitting it all that well, you're going to find a lot of trouble in your way for sure, and it will be very difficult for your guys to score, basically. And then the other stat that I like to look at, because it is a par 72, will be par 5 scoring.
Yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on there. Should be a good week here. I mean, let's jump into these top guys up here. You got 5 over 9,900. You got Rory is your most expensive, and you got Jason Day. I will have to say, I think my two favorite of the top tier guys, over 10K, is probably going to be Justin Thomas and Dustin Johnson. I think Dustin Johnson's extremely too cheap, 10-3, especially with the amount of value and mid-range that we have on this tournament.
Yeah, especially with him being at number one, it's a little surprising for him to be the fifth guy here. Interesting to note about the number one world ranking is that I think most of these guys actually does have a chance to overtake DJ. For Justin Thomas, he doesn't really need to finish all that well. I think he can still miss the cut and have DJ finish, I think, outside the top 15. And then that'll make Justin Thomas be the new number one. And then you got like John Rahm and Jordan Spieth. If they finish inside the top 3 or better, then they'll become the new number one. But overall, I think I'm with you for the top guys. I'm just going to go with Justin Thomas as my starting point. His stats are just off the board. He's basically average for around the green, but he is basically in the top 10 in the field for all the other stats that I'm looking at this week. So for him at being the fourth expensive guy, I'm just going to go to him for most of my lineups. And then my second guy would be Dustin Johnson, just because of that motivation factor. He wants to keep that number one ranking. I think with that in mind, I think he'll play well. He should finish inside the top 10, if not win. His stats is still good. He is still playing well. So yeah, I think those two are my top two choices, and I'm just going to fade the other three.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like I'm making a cut, as far as the top guys go. And you mentioned Thomas and Johnson are just very similar. Like around the green, they've been fairly average this year, but everything else, Dustin Johnson, first in par five scoring for some birdie or bench percenter off the tee. Like Dustin Johnson, all these guys just check off so many boxes.
Right. And I think that just comes with their driver. They're so good with their driver that off the tee, they're one of the top two players in the field this week. And then after that, I mean, Justin Thomas is really good with his approaches, and he's actually hitting them very close. And then DJ just likes to make a bunch of birdies. So from that standpoint, yeah, I think those two make a lot of sense. And I don't care if they're popular. I think if you have to make a pivot, I think Spieth makes somewhat good sense to go to him. No one is going to play him, I think, because of his course history. He missed the cut here the last 3 years. So I think for tournaments, maybe go to Spieth. But for me personally, I'm just going to fade the top three guys and stick with Thomas and DJ.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, for the most part, like you can definitely use guys like McIlroy and Day and Spieth. Like it's not saying these guys obviously have potential to win. I think Spieth, I agree with you. I think he will be the lower owned. I still think McIlroy probably stands the best shot out of that group that we just mentioned to possibly win. Not named Thomas or Johnson. I think out of those top three, I think McIlroy is the guy that could pull off a little bit more than like a Day or Spieth here.
Yeah, if Rory just doesn't have that second round like he did last week, basically, and just sticks it together for all 4 rounds, with this driver, he should really overpower this golf course. And I mean, it shows with this course history. I mean, 4 top 15s in the last 5 years playing here. So with that in mind, if you want to pay up and play Rory, I mean, you can absolutely do that this week, because the pricing is so soft that there's so much value in a low 7,000, high 6,000 range that you can actually do that this week.
Yep, definitely. Let's move on 9K range. Only a couple of guys here. You got Ricky Fowler, Jon Rahm, Justin Rose, Sergio Garcia. I think Fowler's interesting, but I think Rahm's my guy in this range that I'm really looking at. Rahm's another one who's kind of like DJ and Thomas, where they kind of excel at the stats I'm looking at. Around the green, they're all fairly average, but I really like the rest of the stuff they got going on.
Yeah, the only thing that scares me with Rahm would be, I guess you could say, his mental side a little bit. He does like to get routed up. Not to say I don't like that. I mean, I don't mind seeing guys get mad after they 3-putt or something like that. But that tends to get to his head a lot recently. However, it's him and Justin Rose for me in this range. It seems like every week I'm just going back to Rose. He is just so consistent overall. I mean, he's 7th in the field for birdie or better percentage. He's top 20 in proximity and also par 5 scoring. So at 9,100 feels a little too cheap for Justin Rose. If you look at his course history, I mean, 3 made cuts here in the last 5 years. That includes a 4th place finish back in 2014. So I think Rose makes a lot of sense for cash, and I kind of like Rom for tournaments this week.
Too. We're gonna get to Tiger here soon. Who, he's gonna be popular this week. But some of these guys here: Paul Casey, 8,900; Stenson, 8,800; Patrick Reed, 87. Like this is a range that's loaded with potential guys. Matsuyama is interesting. 8,500. He didn't work for me last week, but I like what he adds, especially around the green. Very solid off the tee. You don't really see it this year, but over a larger sample size, Matsuyama is very solid off the tee. He's my GPP guy in that range.
Yeah, Matsuyama looks like he has a really good course history here. Made the cut here last 4 years. That's with the top 10 finish in 2016. Going back up at the top, I mean, Casey and Stenson kind of makes sense with cash. You can probably argue to start your cash lineup with these two guys. Stenson is just playing lights out this year. If you look at his stats, I mean, he's second in approach, the green, 14th in the field for proximity. And then Casey is just being Paul Casey. He's making the cut, and then he may have an off week, but for the most part, it's like a top 30, top 20 finish for him. So yeah, I mean, you can really start your cash lineup with Casey, Stenson, and even Patrick Reed. Like Patrick Reed is pretty much the hottest player in this field as of right now. Has the win at the Masters. It has like 3 or 4 top 10s outside of that entering this week. So yeah, I don't mind those 3 guys at all, just above Tiger. And yeah, everyone saw Tiger's odds this morning. It's 40-1 at 8,600. Yeah, he should be one of the more popular guys, I think, this week.
Yeah, I think so. Like everything's really just, it cleans up some putting and he's right in the mix. We've seen it a couple times already this year. Looking at what last week was probably his worst. I guess, I missed the cut to Genesis, but really last week was his worst performance and it still wasn't terribly bad on the greens. Like you expect him to be fine here. 8,600, too cheap from where he's been, over the last few tournaments. So yeah, already seen his name popped up a couple places. It's Monday evening. He is going to be popular here this week.
And I think that goes with this odds being so like where it is, where you're used to seeing it like better than 25-1. To see double that pretty much is, it's like, oh my God, I got to put money on this before it drops again. Almost, but no, I mean, last week his putting was god awful. It was just one of those weeks where he just did not make anything, and outside of last week, I mean, he has some great performances around the Masters, and this is one of those courses where if he can just plot his way around the design, then I think it won't be a surprise to anyone. This week might be the week that he might get his first win. After hearing his post-round interview after the 3rd round, he says it's trending in the right direction for next week, and he knows the course, he knows the greens. So yeah, it's gonna be a question of, do I go 100% or not on Tiger this week, because he's going to be so popular, being so cheap this week.
Yeah, I think for me, playing GPPs, I'm going to be probably looking to fade at his ownership. It's just, there's so many guys in that range that I think have more potential to have shown a little bit more. Woods is obviously in a decent spot here, like you could use them, but for the ownership perspective, I think I'm going to be off.
Yeah, it's just, again, it's one of those questions you have to ask yourself, okay, if he's going to be above 30%, am I going to make him my core guy and double that and make sure I have the leverage? Or am I going all in or just completely fade? It's just one of those situations where you can't just go even with the field. You kind of go overweight or just fade him this week. And if he wins, then that's great for him. That's great for the game. But yeah, for me, it's a no-brainer. It's almost all in play this week.
There's a couple other guys that you mentioned in your article this week. You got Francisco Molinari, 8,100 is a cash game guy. You also have Bryson DeChambeau at 8,300, which you like in GPPs. We'll start with cash and Molinari at 8,100.
Yeah, so I think Molinari should be that the highest owned golfer this week. He's only 8,100. The course history speaks for itself. I mean, 3 top 10s in the last 3 years. I mean, if you look at his recent play, I mean, he has 3 top 30s in his last 4 starts. Last week he was very quiet, but he finished in the top 20 last week, which was good to see. If you look at his stats, I mean, he's 5th in the field for off the tee, which bodes well here. He's top 30 in par 5 scoring. And then he's pretty much average for the other stats that I'm looking at. The only thing that's holding him back is he's just not hitting it close enough to give him the more opportunities that he needs to actually win. But overall, I think at 8,100, yeah, he's going to be chalk. We haven't seen a 40% owned player yet this year. He could be very close, I think, this week.
Yeah, I do too. And then you got a nemesis here as well.
Yeah, good old Bryson. I know I've said it before that I would never play him again because every time I play him, something bad happens and he misses the cut. But you can't ignore his recent play. I mean, it's like three top 5s in the last 4 starts, I think it is. If you look at his stats, he's in the top 20 in the field in the 5 stats that I'm looking at this week. The only reason I put him in the GPP section is because, one, this is his first time playing at the Players, and then also his short game is a little below average. Like it's still decent around the greens, but yeah, it's a little scary to swallow a little bit. At 8,300, I think for tournaments it's a really good play. You can argue with his recent play. You can put him in cash. Again, the only thing that scares me is that this is his first time playing here, and is around the green stats right now is not looking good. So for that, yeah, he's at tournaments, and then Molinari again. Just be forewarned, he's going to be chalk. He's going to be at least 30% owned this week.
Yeah. A couple other guys in this range. I mean, some bigger names here. Obviously, you got Kuchar 7,800, Noren 79. You got Bubba Watson there 79 as well. Kistner. Any of these guys interesting to you? I think Noren 79, even with his recent performance, is somewhat interesting.
Yeah, Noren seems to kind of slow down recently. I guess it's a nice way of putting it. When you look at his stats, it's still relatively good, not great, but at 7,900, I can't really go wrong with him, especially with him finishing 10th here last year. So I can get behind him a little bit, but his miscut last week really hurt me. Matt Kuchar, I don't know. Matt Kuchar just seems a little off. He doesn't look like the Kuchar of old right now. I still need to wait and see on him whether I need to play him or maybe just start fading him for the rest of the year. Something's just a little off with him. And then I think the play up here might be Louis, consistent Louis. He's just up on that leaderboard when you least expect it, and then before you know it, it's like a top 3 finish. That's what he did here last year, and I wouldn't mind going back to him this week. I just don't want to miss that train if he actually does play well, because he's just one of those guys where you don't play him and then he finishes well and he's like, why did I not play him? It's just one of those things. And yeah, I think going to Louis this week makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, definitely at 7,700, he's intriguing. I will say, go back up real quick. Tommy Fleetwood, I think, is someone interesting in tournaments. It doesn't stand out in any one particular stat that we're looking at this week outside of like strokes gained off the tee. He's decent around the greens. He's top 20 there. Like, he's a guy who's somewhat intriguing. I don't think he's going to garnish a ton of ownership either. And he's one of those kind of wild cards. And he is a scorer. This guy can score at times, and I kind of like him at 8,200 in tournaments.
Yeah, I can get behind that if you're just looking at stats. Period. I've always compared him with Nord. I think him and Nord are very similar. I think Nord is just slightly better than Fleetwood, but they're very close. With Fleetwood, I mean, his stats, like you said, are okay. I mean, he did make the cut here, finished top 50 here last year. So, but just like Noren last week, Fleetwood was very popular and he missed the cut. He was actually, I think, near dead last after Friday. So that'll be a nice tournament play this week, especially with him sandwiched in between Bryson DeChambeau and Molinari. I think those two will be more popular, obviously, with Molinari. But overall, I think he's a nice pivot option, especially what happened last week.
Yeah, definitely. A couple guys in here in the mid-range you talk about. Zach Johnson, 7,500 cash game guy. Also Adam Hadwin, you have cash as well. Hadwin's really intriguing here this week at 7,300.
Yeah, we all know that Hadwin is a really good putter. To me, Hadwin and Zach Johnson almost, and you could probably put in Molinari into the mix as well. All three of the guys seemed like a free square at this point. With Hadwin at being at 7,300, I mean, he's had back-to-back top 40s here last 2 years. He's first in the field for around the green. He's fifth in approach. I'm actually picking him to win this week. He's on form. I mean, if you look at his recent play, I mean, it's, 3 top 15s in the last 4. He has 0 missed cuts. At 7,300 is very cheap for him. And then same thing goes for Zach Johnson. I mean, if you look at his stats, he's quietly having a really good season this year. He has 0 missed cuts. I mean, if you look at his course history here, a couple top 20s in the last 5 years. I mean, if you even look at his stats, like, he's second in the field for proximity, 13th in the field for around the green. So, like I said, I think with the way the pricing is, you can argue yourself to go 100% on Zach Johnson, Hadwin, and even Molinari, and just be unique that way. And and you could go be different somewhere else. But I think with those three guys being basically 8,000 or less makes perfect sense for cash this week.
Anyone else stand out in this kind of 74, 7,500 range? Like, you do have a lot of names in this place. Like, it is interesting just because you do have RCB, you have Luke List, Finau, you have Grillo there, Harmon as well, Cantlay. Like, there are a lot of names here to potentially use. I think Finau is really intriguing, 7,500. Obviously, a guy who's solid off the tee, great par 5 score. He's a guy that's just, we say this every time, it's just a guy, if the putter's average, he'll be a guy who's in contention.
Yeah, the only thing that scares me with Finau is his course history. He's missed the cut here the last 2 years, but he has been a different Finau a little bit this year, playing a lot better. I think the one guy who's a little bit higher than him, Brooks Koepka, is a little interesting. I don't know. I don't know what it is with Brooks. He played okay last week, especially being paired with Tiger the first 2 days. That was nice. That was nice to see. And then he actually played well in the team event also. So coming off the wrist injury, it's really good to see him back in form. He had a top 20 here last year. I don't know how popular he's going to be, but I don't mind going to Koepka in tournaments. Outside of him, I really like Grillo this week. You can make a case between him and Sack for your lineup. That might be the difference if you're going to cash or not. If you look at Grillo's stats, I mean, he's basically top 20 in the field in 3 of the stats that I'm looking at. And then he finished 11th here last year. So at 7,500, I think he's a perfect bold for cash games this week.
GPP guy that stood out for me, Brendan Steele, 7,200. I mean, his only bad performance this year really came at the Masters. A guy who's pretty solid. I mean, you look at him, he's 11th in birdie or better. Off the tee, he's very solid, 4th there. He's a guy who I think can do some damage here this week. I think he is a little bit risky, but I think if you're trying to fade some ownership, I don't think Steele's going to be too popular. I could kind of see him maybe being around that 12, 13, 14% range, which I would gladly take at 7,200.
Yeah, I've said this before, and we've both said it, where he's really been our core guy for a year and a half, basically now. He's just been that consistent. If you just look at his recent play, just the one missed cut at the Masters, he finished top 10 here last year. The only thing that scares me a little bit with Steele is he's not doing that well recently with strokes gained around the green. He's near the bottom of the field this week. So that's a little worrisome, but he is top 10 in the field for off the tee. So hopefully he'll be really good with that and good with his irons like he always is, and doesn't have to chip as much. But this might be the week where I might go away from Steele. Something is just not right with me. And it's not just him. It's like Gary Woodland is down here as well. His stats, pretty much the same thing with Steele. Not really doing all that great around the green, but he's top 5 for off the tee. So yeah, those two guys I'm still thinking about this week, but being at 7,200, all you need is for them to make the cut, and that's really it. And Yeah, I think you're right with the ownership. I think with Steele, no more than probably 13%, probably closer to 10 if I had to guess right now.
Yeah, and I mean, definitely kind of a high risk, high reward option. A lineup or two here and there is kind of how you look to use him. I know a guy that you're looking at in GPPs this week, Grayson Murray, 7K.
Yeah, Grayson is just one of those guys where I really haven't played that much this year. I guess you could say I have a somewhat of a bias towards him. I just I don't know what it is with him. I just don't play him. But I mean, if you look at his recent performance, I mean, he has 3 top 20s in his last 5 starts here. He made the cut here last year. I think if anything, it was an MDF. He didn't make it for Sunday last year, but overall, he has at least he played Sawgrass once before. And then if you look at his stats, I mean, he's ninth in the field for making birdies. He's 15th in the field for around the green. So recently, he's playing very well, and then he should perform well at this course, especially with the stats that I'm looking at this week. Being at 7K, again, just like Steele and Woodland, you don't really need that much out of him just to make the cut, and he won't kill your lineup if he does make the cut. So, yeah, it's just one of those things where you kind of have to really find that one golfer down here that might be overlooked, and I think Grayson Murray might be that guy this week.
Was there anyone below 7K that stood out, or someone that you maybe overlooked here in the 7K range?
As of right now, there's really no one that I'm particularly interested in the 6,000 range. As far as the low sevens, I mean, Kevin Streelman again, he's at 7,100 for some reason. He's been really consistent this year. I don't mind him in cash a little bit, but yeah, like Charlie Hoffman again, 7,200. This could be the range, like you said, between basically 7,000 up to 7,500. Will make or break the winning tournament lineup this week.
Who do you got winning here?
Well, I have Adam Hadwin as my winner, but if we go straight to the top, I think the motivation factor kicks in for DJ, and I think knowing that he has to play well to keep the number one spot, I think DJ might do it this week. I think he's going to win, if not Tiger.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not going with a bold call here this week. I think it is DJ. I don't think we're going to see kind of a lesser name come away with it this week. I think it's going to be a Thomas or Dustin Johnson here.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to be like your Siwoos. The year before that, it was like Jason Day, and then you had Fowler, and then Tiger won it in 2013. So, yeah, I think this year it's just going to be one of the bigger names, and DJ just makes a lot of sense this week.
Yeah, he definitely does. Let's go wrap it up with us. You can head over to DaveFantasyCafe.com. You can check out Chris's GPP and cash game article for this week. And stay tuned. Probably a lot of news will be out over the next few days or so.
Exactly. We'll see what happens. But, yeah, it looks really good right now. So, yeah, go Tiger. That's all I got.
Yeah, you got to get the Tiger in there. So one of these tournaments, you're going to be right here with a win.
Right? Everyone's saying he's going to win this year. The way he's been looking and playing is it looks like it's going to be one of those courses where he's just going to plod his way around, and his putting will turn around, whether it be this week or by the U.S. Open. It's going to happen this year, I feel. And yeah, I know I've said it before the last few times he's been out, but I think this week he will win.
Yeah. That's it for us. HelloDaveHansenCafe.com, and we'll see you guys next week.